You may remove your shoes. You may remove your wigs. The doors, are they locked and bolted?
Locked and bolted. I gladness.
Good.
No.
Witches of England. Your disgrace. Miserable witches. You're good-for-nothing worms. Everywhere I look, I see the repulsive sight of hundreds, thousands of revolting little children. I ask you, why? One child a week is no good to me.
We will do better. We will do much better.
Better is no good either. I demand maximum results. So, here are my orders. My orders are that every child in England shall be rubbed out, destroyed. Every single child eliminated. Do I make myself clear?
We can't possibly wipe out all of them.
Who spoke? Who dares to argue with me? It was you?
I didn't mean to argue, Your Grandness.
You dared to argue with me?
No, honestly, it just was a...
A stupid witch who answers back must burn until her bones are black.
No.
A foolish witch without a brain must sizzle into fiery flame. A bitch who dares to say I'm wrong will not be with us very long. Look, the devil.
Hello and welcome to the very last spooky book versus movie of October 2022. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
So Margot D., before we get to anything else, your book is out. Can you talk a little bit about your book so people know about it?
Yes, thank you all so much that have pre-ordered already. I really appreciate it. It's called Filmed in Brooklyn, and basically it's about movies that were filmed in Brooklyn for over 2 years. I looked at over 250 movies, and they are listed in this book, and everything from Saturday Night Fever to the Marvel Universe, and you can get it wherever you get your books. And I've been on a ton of podcasts, and so many podcast hosts have been like, you have a show called Book versus Movie? That's so my jam. So I have been able to talk about this show in addition to, my book, and it's been really, really fun. And yeah, please get it. It makes a great gift for the holidays. So
I agree. It's a great gift for any movie lover. That's a lot of movies, Mark.
Yes. I will say, though, I didn't finish them all. I don't know how Baby Mama ends by Tina Fey and Amy Poehler or Kazam, but you get the idea.
Well, as you heard, maybe that's how you found us, is maybe you heard Margot talking about her book somewhere. So we always talk about films that have been adapted from books, but when the pandemic started, very long time ago now, we decided to do a brand new episode every single week. And that meant that we had to expand our definition of Quoty Finger's book to mean really any literary source. So sometimes we're doing adaptations from novellas or magazine articles or a play. As long as it has a literary source, we will consider it for this show. And if you have ideas for adaptations that we can cover, there are a few places where you can suggest those and meet other listeners of this podcast and interact with us on the internet.
Yes, we just ask that the place where you get the movie needs to be on a major streaming app so that everyone is able to get to it and see it. It can't be some DVD that we have to buy from Canada, from a particular store in Canada or whatever. Anyway, we do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. All the episodes are posted there. We have a private Facebook group. That's where we're the most interactive. And we're on Twitter and Instagram. And there you spell out book versus movie. Please follow us there if you have those apps and if you use those social media sites. And then have an old-timey email. Book versus movie podcast, spell it all out at gmail.com. You can send your suggestions there. Also, if you would like to get some stickers, we have a stack of stickers. We'd love to send them to you, show your support for the show. Once again, that's book versus movie podcast at gmail.com.
And if you really enjoy the show and you would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon. And I think we have a new Patreon supporter this week. Is that right?
Yes, we have Susie who just joined us in the past week. We've been posting a bunch of old Stephen King episodes up there. So we've been doing the show since 2008. We have about 200 episodes on our Patreon page. Lots of Roald Dahls are up there. We're basically putting everything from 2020 and then previous that up onto the Patreon page, Patreon. We have a couple of very affordable options, and we really appreciate all it just helps us get these books and these the streaming apps to watch the movies and the basic costs for running the show. But we totally understand that if money's tight, just leave a few stars wherever you get your podcast, leave a review, or just tell a friend about the show, seriously, or just enjoy the show. Whatever, just enjoy it.
That's right. We're just glad you're here.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here. We didn't think anybody would listen to this besides us. It was just a way for us to connect with each other. We live on opposite coasts, and we weren't reading at the time. We weren't reading very much fiction. And here we are with all of you. We're very, very excited that you're here. One more thing we want to mention before we dive into this very fun again, we always do spooky movies in October, which I love doing, although I'm not into gore and horror so much, but I like spooky, ghosty, witchy, like we're going to talk about today. And this is the perfect time to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Kensington's newest title, A Ghost in Shining Armor by Therese Beharry.
Yes, so Therese is from Cape Town, and this is a story. It's the second in a story about two South African sisters, and one of them has a special gift. It's a rom-com where she meets a man, realizes she has the gift of second sight, and it turns out he's somebody who recently passed away, and she doesn't realize that he's kind of a ghosty coming back to life to teach her a lesson, and she thinks that he's on this earth to teach him a lesson. But love ensues, and it's very funny. She's a very popular romance writer. She has the hashtag Own Voices. Her website is Therese Beharry, and she's also on Twitter at Therese Beharry. Please get this book. It's fabulous. It's on the Libby app. There's also an audio version. And we just want to thank the people at Kensington Press for supporting our show. They have been for over a year now. We really appreciate it.
I love a fun ghosty story.
Right?
It kind of reminds me of maybe an updated Ghost and Mrs. Muir.
I was just thinking the same thing.
21st century, right?
And it's got a little 90s references mixed in with it that a lot of people really enjoy. I mean, if you go to Goodreads, she has a lot of fans. They're very passionate for her, and they're really psyched about this book.
You can find A Ghost in Shining Armor by Therese Beharry wherever books are sold. Find out more at kensingtonbooks.com. Now, today's author is one that we've talked about quite a bit in our very long history of doing this show. I was just looking, I was like, oh yeah, we did that one. And oh yeah, we did that one too. Quite a lot of them we've covered. Now we're talking about Roald Dahl. We've covered Matilda. Mm-hmm. We've covered Fantastic Mr. Fox. James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We're forgetting
we're
Chitty
forgetting.
Chitty Bang Bang.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is probably our number one episode. It is one of the top downloaded episodes we've had in years. It's continually one of the top 10 episodes. It has
funny.
super fans that I had no idea about. I thought it was some like obscure fun movie that we enjoyed in our childhood.
Shocked.
Yes, it completely has super fans. So
For good reason. I mean, we liked it. It was fun. Yeah, that's right. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He wrote the screenplay because it's Ian Fleming's book.
that's right.
Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond. So we've talked about him a lot. We've covered his bio a lot. But for those of you who are new, we'll just hit some of the broad strokes here.
Yes, we've talked about him many, many times. He's one of the most prolific writers of the 20th century. Things about him. He was a very tall man. He served in World War II. English, he served for OSS. He also came to America and was working as a spy and also as a journalist. He was friends with Ian Fleming. He was a great dancer. He was a tremendous womanizer, and he became a writer. He was, like I said, incredibly prolific. He was somebody who was very unusual in that he wrote children's literature almost exclusively, yet didn't seem to like kids very much, had many children. He was in a long-term marriage with Patricia Neal. They went through several tragedies. You could read about it. It's unreal. The novel that we're talking about today is The Witches. It came out in 1983. This is right around the time that he divorced Patricia Neal, and then he quickly remarried someone much younger that he'd been in a relationship for a while. He also is, we would say, a problematic person because he's someone who also was very anti-Semitic, which was known at the time.
Proudly so.
Right.
Like, he was not, we're not like reading into anything.
No.
Or like connecting he was super wanted everybody to know about it.
Yeah, he was open about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not the sum total of him as a person, but it is something that he did. It was things that he said, and it's some things that, like, when I read his work, I do have to kind of take a step back sometimes, like, that's what you're using as a description? Okay. Like, right. Anyway, so he passed away a few years ago, but he's like one of the leading creatives of the 20th century. He hated Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He hated the actors that were used. He didn't like the music. He was a real grump about the adaptations for his work, including this one, by the way. And we'll talk about the differences between the book and movie, which is what we do. But let's talk about this today, the Witches. He did one more major one after this, which is Matilda actually came out after this work. He lived a very long life.
I can't remember. Did he like Matilda? Did he see Matilda? Did he live to see the movie?
I don't know. He died in 1990. So maybe
so
not.
He didn't see it.
Also, by the way, he astonishing life. Like, he was a war hero. He survived a plane crash when he was. I mean, he was like 6'6". He was just this very unusual person. He had tremendous tragedies in his life, and he also had tremendous successes, and was just bigger than life, and just a very interesting person.
I think I read he's the top earning dead celebrity.
He's up there. I mean, he has plenty of intellectual properties, and his books have never been off the bestseller list. He's one of the top selling, and his work with Quentin Blake, who's his major illustrator and collaborator on his works. I mean, it's just, he's children's books, which is very tough to break into and very tough to be a success in. He's just one of the greatest, and took huge risks with his works. And we'll talk about that today, because boy, does he take them here.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into it. We're going to be talking about The Witches. I probably read it I don't know if I read it when it came out, because I was the age that I was, like going into college. I don't know that I would have read this book. I remember seeing the movie.
Right.
I listened to the audiobook of this, and it was a wonderful, I got it off the Libby app, fantastic performance of this book by Miranda Richardson, who I adore. Miranda Richardson, who was in Blackadder, and she plays Rita Skeeter in the Harry Potter movies. She's in everything. Crying Game. I could just be here all day. She does all the voices. It's so good. Did you also? I thought you said you also listened to one, right?
Yeah, I also I shut my phone, so I don't have it with me, but it's in Audible. But she also did the same thing. She did all the voices and things. It's an actor's kind of dream to do this part, because especially if you're a woman, to do all these voices, because there's a German accent, there's a Norwegian accent, there are English accents. You're doing children, you're doing witches, you're doing all kinds mice. Excuse me. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's I just love it. It was recently adapted again to film, but we are not looking at the recent one. We're looking at the original one. I only watched like the trailer for the newer one.
I didn't,
with Octavia Spencer. It looks fine.
Yeah.
There's 3 children who are mice for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, anyway, we're going to be talking about the 1991, which was directed by Nicolas Roeg, who we also talked about this month. But let's talk about the book, because there are some big differences between the book and the movie.
Yeah, it's listed as a dark fantasy, and boy, is it ever. We have an unnamed narrator, and it's a young boy, an English boy, and his parents are killed in a car accident. He's in the car when it happens, by the way, in the book.
Yeah.
So it starts right away, like your worst nightmare as a child. He's sent to live with his Norwegian grandmother. Roald Dahl's background is Norwegian. That's Welsh and Norwegian. And his grandmother tells him these stories about witches and says, all women are witches. It's rather misogynistic, you can interpret.
No, all witches are women.
All witches are women. I guess warlocks are male witches. But
I guess.
He doesn't talk about that, though.
No.
He never saw Bewitched, I guess.
It's right around the time his marriage ended, just a reminder.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the stories are super scary. Jeez, I don't know. Okay, I mean, we're led to understand, like, the grandmother has she's basically devoted her life to defeating witches and has had run-ins with witches all her life. And so presumably, she out of love for her grandson and trying to protect him, she's telling him all these stories. But also, like, your kid just lost his parent. I mean, this kid just lost his parents. Maybe now is not the time to, like, bring on the witches.
He's like in the first grade or something. He's 7 years old.
Tiny.
He's a little kid. And she says to him, okay, witches are real. All witches are women. Yeah. And once again, like,
now that your parents are
right, that you're an orphan.
Listen.
And I'm an old lady and I'm taking care of you. And no, you can't stay with me here where you feel safe. I got to take you back to England and go to school, even though you want to stay with me. But them's the rules because your parents said that. Anyway, all witches are women, and all the witches want to do is eat children. And that's how they get away with murdering children, is they just eat them. So that's why the cops can't figure it out. And he's like, they kill them. That's what he says, that they kill them. And they say that the witches don't look like ordinary people, that they have, like, basically a mask. And when the mask comes off, they're bald. There's a lot of also just, like, look shaming and like,
Oh, absolutely. It's
yeah. I mean, there was some of the criticism was that it's the misogyny and also just, like, ugly women are horrible. And he makes a big point of saying, like,
no, they're evil and
right.
are murderers.
And the biggest witch of all is somebody who has the Grand High Witch has a very big nose and big nostrils. Once again, he's anti-Semitic, so I was kind of like,
yeah, really?
Yeah.
Are we gonna
was this necessary? Okay. Because you could smell well without that, but okay. But anyway, this is neither here nor there. That she's somebody that nobody can see her in real life, but when she takes off her mask, this is what comes out, and she's, like, hideous. And in life, nobody sees her, but when she's amongst her other hens, other women that are witches, their masks come off and they're evil. And their evilness comes out, and they're bald and ugly, and they're all gleefully talking about, we can't wait to eat children. Wouldn't that be great when there are children? And they also turn kids into mice.
that's later on. But yeah, basically any woman. So anyway, they hide by looking like every woman. So any woman you encounter could be an evil child-eating witch. Anyone. Absolutely anyone.
Right.
The other thing that I find so unsettling about this book and the movie, because this is true in the movie as well. It doesn't seem that it's true in the new movie. I will say that. But in the book and in the movie, like the grandmother does not seem at all ruffled by the fact that she has lost a child. Like, you're not like, she's not even sad. I mean, I understand, like, you're caring for this grandchild and like you gotta like stiff up her lip and carry on, but aren't you a little sad? Like, don't you want to like talk to the kid about the parents?
No, she immediately
we
goes
don't
into,
do that.
no, we got to look out for witches because they're going to come get you.
Yeah. It's a little weird, I find. I just think that I find that very odd. Very odd.
He's, like I said, he's going through a divorce. He's marrying somebody right away that's much younger than him. He was a womanizer his whole life. I mean, he's always, so anyway. So what is he bitching about is my point, but okay.
Exactly. What did they do to him? Nothing.
Nothing. He's still rich. He's still, whatever. Okay.
So anybody's a witch. Anybody's a witch. And in the book, something happens. They're in England, and I can't remember, the grandmother gets sick or something because she wants to take him out of, he sees a witch. The boy sees a witch when they get to England. He sees a witch, and his grandmother's like, "Oh no, we're not doing this again. So we're going to go to Norway." But she's sick or something, and she can't travel. She's not allowed to travel. And the doctors say, "Well, okay, if you need to get away, we get that. Just go to the seaside here in England." So they go to this seaside hotel in England, and turns out it is they're having like the convention of all the witches in
that
Britain.
one hotel. Yeah, she doesn't, in the movie she has diabetes or something. In the book she has some other thing going on.
Yeah, it's some other ailment. I can't remember what it was.
You should also understand sometimes with the show, like sometimes we're reading something for the first time. So we're just taking it in for this. And sometimes we're reading something like we've read it 10 times before. It's just the way it goes with the show. But that's what it is. And so she also warns him like that there's different witches around the world and they all have their different traditions. She also has, is it her thumb that was bitten off, or she's like missing a thumb? Or...
Yeah, she has a finger or fingertip or something, and that's missing.
It's all gruesome.
And it has something to do with witches. We don't know what.
Right.
I mean, it's grisly. The book is even more grisly than the movie. I'd only seen the movie. Yeah, wow.
It's scary.
Not like it. Really, it's a big bucket of ice water to the face. This book.
Yes. I can't imagine my mom reading this to me. I think at some point she'd stop and be like, you know what, this is not going to work, because the witches have this big convention, as they do. You got to get together once a year. And the head witch says, the grand high witch says, look, you're all, we need to get some more children. There's too many kids out there. We're all annoyed by them. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to quit your jobs. I'm going to give you some money, and you're going to open sweet shops and candy shops. And that's how you're going to lure more children. And one of the kids that they're going to lure is a kid named Bruno.
Bruno, yeah.
Who's
in the hotel. He's staying in the hotel with his family.
And they get Bruno by luring him with chocolates, which is how you kind of lure any kid, really, right? Like that's since time immemorial, sweets.
That's how you do it, apparently. That's what you do. Yeah.
So he sets up, he eats a little bit of chocolate, and they lace the chocolate with something in there that makes Bruno fall asleep. And
yeah, something they call Formula 86, like as in the expression to 86 somebody to make them
the delayed
disappear.
Out action mouse maker, which is a potion that turns him into a mouse. He turns into this, and they also have they have like a blue liquid in them, like it's like an ink. Is it the ink that they have, or it's an ink that can stop them? There's like this blue liquid that the witches also have. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of rules.
There's a lot happening here.
Yeah.
I don't quite remember. They have an unlimited supply of money because the Grand High Witch has a printing press. You know, she's a counterfeit operation in her castle where she lives, and so there's money is no object. They can easily go and offer 4 times the asking price and buy up all these candy shops, and the idea is that the chocolate is laced with this Formula 86, which I always heard that expression came from that speakeasy in New York City, Chumley's, I think it was called.
Oh, really?
Did you ever go there?
No.
Oh, it was cool. I don't know if it's still around, but yeah, from Prohibition era. And it was called that because it was number 80. This is what I heard, that it was called that because it was number 86. But if you went to look for number 86, it did not exist. There was no number on the bill. So it was like, so to 86, somebody was to disappear them, right?
Oh, I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So the and in the book he goes into great detail about the recipe for the formula. You know, it's all this rare stuff that you have to climb a mountain and get this bird's egg and go into a cave and get this other thing and all these weird ingredients. One of the ingredients is an alarm clock. Which is what causes the delayed response, so that the children don't eat the chocolate and immediately turn into a mouse. It's all supposed to be timed so that it happens like when they're on their way to school the next day for some reason. Like that's supposed to be, I didn't understand the timing part of it. But anyway, as the Grand High Witch is giving them the recipe, this very elaborate recipe, the older witches in the room are like, I can't be climbing a cliff. Like, what are you talking about? Like, with my knees? Get out of here.
I'm old. I can't do that.
I'm old. And so the Grand High Witch is like, okay, listen. Those of you who are, I forget how old they were, 70 and above, the useless ones, you come to my room and I have extra bottles of Formula 86 and I will give you your own bottle of Formula 86. The rest of you young people, you need to make your own. You know, I expect you all to be making your own. And I want all of the children in Britain to be wiped out completely by the time I come back for next year's convention. I don't know what they're going to tackle. What's their new business at that convention going to be if like all the kids are gone? I don't know, but
right. And I don't
know.
understand.
So it's a delayed response,
right?
So she had already given Bruno the dose, and she's inviting him to come into this what do they call that, ballroom? Mm-hmm. Where they're having the convention at just the right time for the mouse maker to take effect, having promised him more chocolate, of course, which is, of course, he's going to show up for that. And while all of this is going on, our narrator is hiding in the room. He has pet mice, and the pet mice had gone scurrying into the room, and he kind of chased them, and it ended up in there, locked in the room with all of these witches. Oh, and another thing is that witches can smell children. That's how they know where they are. And so the grandmother, first thing, like, okay, your parents are gone. Here's what you need to do is not bathe because witches can smell you and witches are terrible. And here's all the terrible things they can do to you. Here's what they look like, yada, yada. But so by the time this has happened and they're in this hotel, he has not bathed for some time. So they don't quite know that he's there yet. And so he's observing, he's seeing the witches without their masks on. He knows who the Grand High Witch is. He knows what room she's staying in because she tells the older witches, like, come to my room. It's room 414 or whatever. So now he knows all this information. Bruno turns into a mouse, and all the witches are, I might as well call them women because it's the same thing as far as Roald Dahl is concerned. Right. They're all delighted and somehow I think they finally smell our narrator. Right. And that is so scary, you guys. I think that's the scariest part of the book is when they sniff out the narrator and he's trying to get away from them. And I would have nightmares if I had read this as a child. This would give me nightmares, this scene. They capture him. They force the mouse maker into him like a massive, massive dose. So he immediately turns into a mouse. Now, again, this is a thing that's in the book that they don't mention in the movie, but you can sort of just tell, although he has turned into a mouse, he still can talk like a person, and he still can talk at his full normal speaking volume as well. So if he talks, like his grandmother fully hears him as if he's a normal sized boy. So that's a thing. And so now the grandmother's like, oh, well, we're going to get these witches now. We got to get these witches. And because the little boy, so they take advantage of the little boy being a mouse, basically, and being able to get into little places and things. And it's a short story. The mouse boy, the grandmother sneaks him into the Grand High Witch's room. He steals the formula. He drops it into the soup that the Grand High Witch and her witches are served at the next meal at the hotel. And they all turn into mice, and the hotel staff, the hotel staff kill them all, stomp on them, chop them up with knives. It's very grisly. But they're all wiped out by the hotel staff. And they're like, yay! The little boy and the grandmother are like, hooray, hooray. But then they're like, well, wait a minute. But those are just the ones in England. And okay, we got rid of this Grand High Witch, but there's going to be another one. Just like when the queen bee of a hive dies, they get another queen. And the grandmother's like, dang, now what do we do? The little mouse boy, it's like, oh, hey, I know what her address is. I know. And so they know where the Grand High Witch's castle is. So like where the queen of the hive lives. They decide to sneak into there and, little by little, basically wipe out all of the witches. But they realize that just like our narrator is a mouse person, he's a mouse, but he also can talk like a human and think like a human. They realize like, wait, these witches are still going to be witches. They'll be mouse witches. And when we can't catch them, that's even worse. So what do? We bring in cats. So they bring cats into the castle, and that's their plan, is like to devote whatever little time of their lives they have left, because he remains a mouse with a mouse's lifespan.
Right. He has a few
Maybe
years.
a little extra.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so does she. So they're going to devote the rest of their lives to wiping out as many of the witches as they possibly can. At the end. And that's how it ends. So he never gets turned back into, that's never even on the table for him to be turned back into a boy in the book.
No. And supposedly at first, so there were a couple of different endings, and Dahl had an editor, Stephen Roxburgh, who they went back and forth turning him back into a boy or keeping him as a mouse. And they went back and forth because Dahl wanted wanted him to stay a mouse, because he wanted the sadder story, but he also thought this way we can do a sequel of them like coming to America.
Of them like getting rid of the witches in France or whatever. Right. Yeah, it could be a whole series.
And it's like
a whole misogynistic series.
And it's exactly. And it's like, how do you look at it? If you're a little kid, you might be like, well, it wouldn't be so bad to be a mouse. You get to be with your grandma. It's safe. You just have your cheese and you hang out in your little area. But then as an adult, you're like, well, that sounds terrible. You never get to grow up. You never get to live your life. It's a pretty small world that you live. So it's like, how does he look at this world, and how does he think this is great? But that's how he looks at the world. That's what he thinks it should be. And that's the story he wants to tell. And when the book is released, it's controversial. First, it's misogynistic. It's certainly is. It's like the women in the story, except for Grandma, are pretty terrible.
They're all witches. Except for Bruno's mom, who is horrible.
Yes.
Bruno's parents are terrible, terrible people.
They're rude and they ignore him, and they're just terrible people. Yeah. There's just not a lot. But the little boy, who isn't even given a name, but he's just our narrator, but he's just sort of like, well, I'll be with Grandma and I love her, and we only have a few years left for the both of us, but he'd just rather be with her because he loves her. And apparently Dahl really loved his grandmother. Sophie was her name. And then there was Sofie Dahl, the granddaughter, who became a writer and model and an entertainer in London. But anyway, it's still in print. It's still very popular. Later on, he made Matilda, but in 1989, they made the movie. Yeah, it's complex. Dahl's, he makes up words. He makes up a world. He isn't afraid to go dark with children and in the fantasy world, and he treats kids like they're adults, and he throws dark themes at them. That's part of the reason why kids like his work, because he doesn't talk down to them. But it's also a rather morose kind of scary world. And I'm a kid that read Stephen King, and I'm kind of like, ooh.
True. It's pretty grim. Yeah, it's, we talked about James and the Giant Peach a while back, and recently in that book as well, James's parents are killed by a rogue rhinoceros. It's like right out of the gate.
That's true.
It sounds weird as I'm saying this out loud, but the way that the parents are killed in this book is so much darker than that. The fact that it's such a plausible death, the thing, like this rogue rhinoceros thing, you're like, oh, okay. But the fact that it's so plausible, the fact that the boy is present, it's just different. It's just darker and sadder. And yeah. You can read about the critical response to this book. There's a lot of academia has been devoted to it.
Yeah.
But I must say, I mean, I saw the movie when it came out. I like it. I have to say, I like the movie. I do enjoy the movie. And I think it's because, not just because of the cast, which I love, but also because of the directing and Mr. Jim Henson, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But many significant differences in the book and the movie. Yeah. Yeah. Which I think, we'll get into them, but maybe we should listen to the trailer.
Yeah, let's take a quick break and we'll play the trailer, and then we'll get into this movie and this very interesting director whom we've talked about before.
From the incredible imagination of Jim Henson and director Nicolas Roeg comes a fascinating new fantasy adventure, The Witches. For when a little boy accidentally stumbles into their secret world, he finds they've got a lot more power than he ever imagined.
Grandma, it's me, Luke. They turned me into a mouse.
Oh, my.
Who's the Grand High Witch?
Join Luke on his remarkable journey. Now, the witches are on his tail, and he must scurry around their evil plots, squeak past every danger. Finally setting the trap that will save the world from the witches.
You are in for a treat.
We must stop them.
We also should mention this movie is pretty much one of the last productions by Jim Henson before he passed away, which is which was Jim Henson was a big part of our childhood.
Punch.
I know.
Oh, I know. It was, I mean, I was, like I said, I was going into college, and I immediately burst into tears. I remember I just started crying immediately. My son is a huge Jim Henson fan. Like, he's super into Jim Henson, and he had never seen this movie. In our house, we're very into The Dark Crystal. Remember The Dark Crystal?
Oh, yeah.
And we have I'll have to put a picture in the Facebook group. We have a magnet on our fridge with one of the Skeksis who looks very much like the Grand High Witch in this movie. Yeah. And it says, "I'm Skeksy and I know it." But I have to say, I really enjoy. I so prefer just some excellent puppetry to CGI.
Yeah.
Any day. Like, give me Frank Oz Yoda. I mean, it was fun to see Yoda do the ninja moves, but it just doesn't, there's just something, I think on a human level, we just connect with it in such a different way. Yeah. Even on film. Yeah, I think that really is a lot of what's so engaging about this movie. But Nicolas Roeg, I mean, let's talk about Nicolas Roeg again, because we just talked about this October, we talked about Don't Look Now.
Which was another very popular episode of ours. It's considered one of the top horror movies of all time. It's certainly one of the top films from the UK. He was born August 15th, 1928. He's from London. He passed away in 2018. Lived a very long life, lived to be 90. Some of his top films are Performance, Walkabout, The Man Who Fell to Earth. We covered that. And The Witches, which is one of the last films he did. He did some television as well. Some of the people who follow him or say they're influenced by him are Steven Soderbergh, and Christopher Nolan, Danny Boyle. He always puts a weird twist on things. He likes dark. He likes weird. And it's funny to have him take on a children's film because these other films we talked about are very adult, or most of them are. And I think what we have to start with here is the casting of Anjelica Huston. Like, who is better?
Genius. And we should say, okay, we mentioned it briefly before we got to this part of the podcast, but I think we cannot understate enough how much Roald Dahl hated this movie. He said it was utterly appalling. In the book, and I can sort of see why he would maybe see it that way, because I mean the movie makes some big changes to the book, I think for the better. But one of the things is in the book, the Grand High Witch is described as like a very unassuming, short, very like petite, kind of a wallflower, very, what's the word? Nondescript kind of a woman, which Anjelica Huston is most certainly not.
Hello, little boy. Come on in then. Come on. Wait just there. A minute. Now, what's your name then?
Bruno.
Ooh, madam.
That lady promised me 6 whole bars of cream whipped hazelnut milk chocolate. I've come to collect.
Ladies, may I introduce Bruno?
Come up, Bruno. I have the chocolate here. I said 6:15. And that is in 15 seconds from now.
You are in for a treat.
We all are.
What's going on?
Just a few moments.
I can't even see any chocolate. Well, one of you, please tell me when.
We have ignition! Everybody look! It's fantastic! I can tell it's so wonderful! Look at you! It's fantastic!
Stroke of genius, Anjelica Huston. Absolutely.
She's 6 feet tall. She looks great in a black dress. She immediately, she's using this German accent. So let me just go through some of the other cast members that we have. We have Rowan Atkinson, Jason Fisher plays the little boy, and I always think of he was in Hook, but he didn't have any lines in there. We also covered Hook in a past show. He's the little boy in Parenthood who's the son of Steve Martin. He's the one that is like the emotional wreck. He's the kid that has to go to therapy, and he's the one that like Steve Martin. He's the one that has to play baseball.
On his head. Oh, he's that one.
The bucket on his head. I love that kid. No, he's the oldest boy, and he has like all those emotional problems, and Steve Martin's always trying to help him. So he plays Luke. They give him a name, and he's supposed to be English, but he has an American accent the whole time. They have Jane Horrocks is in this movie, and let me bring out the cast.
Yeah, Jane Horrocks, who plays Bubble on Ab Fab. She's an amazing. She was
also in. We talked about Cabaret when we do our March month of musicals. She did a Sally Bowles on London stage. We put a clip in there that was.
Oh, that's right.
She's amazing. Brenda Blethyn's in this movie. It's just Maya Zetterling plays Helga,
his grandmother.
She's so good. There's a huge cast of women and waiters and people that are incredible. I'm sure and here's also the other thing. So there's a scene where she's giving the convention, and all of a sudden, like, she takes her mask off, and it's terrifying. It's up there with Silence of the Lambs. Like,
it really is. Like, you will never forget it. You will never forget seeing that.
Oh my God. Because once again, she's so beautiful, and then she takes off this mask, and it's this hideous mask, and then all the women in the audience take off their masks, and they couldn't get enough women to be extras or to be in the scene, so they had to hire men, and there's men in the background, and supposedly Michael Palin is one of the men because he's friends with Nicolas Roeg.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yes. But they give this speech. So Luke, he joins the grandmother. They kind of quickly move through the parent thing, so it's not so traumatic. But he's there, he meets his grandmother, and she tells him about witches and that they hate children. And he's at this place with his grandmother, and then they go right into like the convention and Anjelica Huston, and he makes this friend Bruno. And in the movie, he and Bruno are friends. I mean, Bruno is just kind of a regular kid. He's just a little boisterous. His parents are idiots.
He's repulsive.
Yes. In the book, you kind of root for the witches, but in the movie, he's just a regular kid. He's just a little boisterous. Rowan Atkinson wasn't famous yet. He hadn't done Mr. Bean, or he was just filming Mr. Bean. So he said his Fawlty Towers impersonation. And supposedly in real life, he left the water running in his bathroom one night, and it fell into the floor below him, and it ruined some electrical equipment. So the crew was really mad at him. There are all kinds of things that are happening here. Oh, and Jim Henson, he was yelled at by Roald Dahl, was so mad at him because of the changes he made, and he had to defend himself. But
what?
Yes. Well, he kept telling him, I know children's television. I know children's entertainment on film.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're Roald Dahl, but hello, he's no slouch.
Yeah. I know what kids want to watch. You know what kids want to read. I know what kids want to watch. And so they had these, but so this time, grandma falls with diabetes. And so if they go from Norway, they go to England to this beautiful little countryside, by the ocean type of thing. Luke happens upon this convention of witches. They spot him, and Anjelica Huston tries to find him. And at one point, she sees a baby and then a baby carriage, and then she kisses the baby, and then she pushes the baby carriage over the cliff, and he has to rescue the baby.
I saw him come this way.
Bye.
in a friend. Oh.
Oh
They really take some risks here. I mean, it's really super scary. The witches are very scary. So in the movie, so she has an assistant, which is Jane. I always say her name wrong. Jane Horrocks.
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 Like horror?
Horror.
Yeah.
Horrocks. So she plays Miss Sue Irvine, and she's the assistant to our grand priestess here. And she starts off like being into it, and then by the end she realizes this is not the life for me. She's a creep and I don't want to do this. But during the meeting, they're all falling into it, and then eventually people start to catch on to her. There's a whole thing where there's the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And Anjelica Huston, like they have things like she doesn't smile normally. She has to smile in a weird way. And she has to, it's very funny where she's like, cruelty to children. It's not, she's amazing in this movie. Anjelica Huston.
It's such a great performance. It's so good.
Outstanding. The German accent that she does. It's just incredible. So poor Bruno gets turned into a mouse, and then eventually Luke gets turned into a mouse. And so, yes, they have their human voices, and they're handling it pretty well considering what's going on. And so they talk to the grandma, and she's trying to figure out, like, let's put some potion in their soup. So there's a separate soup that they're going to have from the other staff. And Luke in that kitchen, boy, the anxiety I got in there. And boy, I feel bad for people who had to eat that food because that place was not sanitary at all. It's just...
I'll bring you your main course.
Well, I put it in the soup.
The whole bottle?
Every drop.
You angel. You're bleeding.
One of the cooks tried to cut off my tail with a carving knife. Look, the Grand High Witch is eating the soup.
They all are. Would you like another roll, sir?
No, nothing. I like some black pepper, please.
Oh, my God.
What?
Bruno's father is about to eat the soup, too.
Stop him! Quick!
Oh, so that's a wheelbarrow. It's been a nightmare. At least we got some clear soup.
Don't touch it!
I told you she was a loony. An absolute nuffer. Look at my bloody soup! And all that stuff about Bruno.
Bruno has been turned into...
He has not been turned into a...
Yes, I have. Hello, Dad.
I know. It does kind of make you rethink, like that fancy resort.
Yeah.
But that scene is so, the whole thing is so brilliantly filmed. And again, Nicolas, I love like Nicolas Roeg to this film brings just the right, it's such a great combo of him and Jim Henson. Like, I love the way, one of the brilliant things about Jim Henson that he understood was that children's programming also has to have some appeal to adults. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to put some stuff in there for the grown-ups. And I think the combo of the two of them, and Nicolas Roeg, like the angles that he's doing, the camera angles and just the view, the vantage points that we get that aren't in the book at all, really. You don't really, but going down low to where the mice are, or all kinds of fun angles that he's doing, like the thing with the baby carriage.
Yeah, the perspective.
The perspective, yes. And that scene is so brilliant. Like, that little mouse is running through, and they're
going through
stomping,
the French
trying
fries.
to stomp it, and ooh.
And you can see like the salt on the French fries, and the guy's grabbing for it and throwing it into the fryer. I used to work fast food. I mean, I was like, oh my God, it's great. And they're making a different, like they make a pea soup in the book, but they make a different kind of soup for the movie. And of course, Bruno's parents are being creeps, and we want that soup. Oi, come here. I want that soup. Rowan Atkinson's like, he has to bring him the soup, and then Grandma saves them. Thank God for Grandma, she saves them. She should
all by herself.
Yeah, and then Miss Irvine finally says she just quits. She's like, I can't be around this person anymore. Eventually, so they turn Anjelica Huston into a mouse, right? And then they also they send the cats.
Yeah, that she in the movie. In the movie, she turns into a mouse, and the grandmother captures her under like a glass pitcher.
Right.
And calls Rowan Atkinson over to do away with her. And I can't remember. Yeah, they decide the grandson and the grandmother decide to go to America, because they also know that they know where all the witches in America are. So they're going to they're like in the book, they're going to devote their lives to getting rid of those witches. It's a little bit different than in the book. Like I said, in the book, they go to the Grand High. They basically occupy the Grand High Witch's castle to lure in witches from all over the world and get rid of them. And in the movie, they're going to go to America. But then Miss Irvine shows up. We see this mysterious Mercedes pull up outside the house.
And Luke is staying in, and I found this out I did a little digging. So he's staying in what they found was a Ghostbusters toy. And it was the Ghostbusters house, the firehouse.
Yeah, it was very famous. My son was just watching a whole, because he loves all this kind of stuff. So it's retro toys. He has this channel that he watches. It's like retro toys. And it was a whole episode about that playhouse, that Ghostbusters playhouse. It's kind of amazing.
Oh, it is. It is. And I think they just took the tag off of it, like the Ghostbusters logo or something. But he's staying in the Ghostbusters house, and the grandmother sets up the whole apartment so he could play around with it. But then Miss Irvine shows up, and she's puts her little hands out, and that's like the green beam, and he turns back into a boy. And he growing up, and so he and his grandma can just, they can just live their lives as humans. And then he says, "No, make sure you take care of Bruno." So she's going to take off in her Mercedes and turn Bruno back into a boy, because his parents were upset that he turned into a mouse, and he was trying to. His spirit was very sweet. He's like, "It's okay, I'll be all right. You could still love me as a mouse." And
yeah. No more school. Yay.
No more school. That's all he could think of.
So he gets turned back into a boy. I don't know what that means for their witch plans.
I think they still do it, because they get her basically her Rolodex or her file, whatever you called it, like her book with all of her. People had a thing, a leather bound thing.
Around paper books.
Yeah, and you put all your addresses in there, and you put the birthdays of people there that you cared about, and anniversaries, and that was your calendar too. And you kept that with you everywhere. And so he has that, so he knows where all the witches are around the world, and they have that money with them, so they're going to travel the world and do that. And his parents are gone. It's just him and Grandma, and she's got just a few years left. So that's what I would do too.
Yeah,
I think it'd be great.
So that's the movie.
Right. It took a year to release. It was Warner Brothers.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
It was Warner Brothers movie, and it took over a year to release. Roald Dahl was so upset by the ending. He was a famous crank. He showed up at movie theaters in England with a what's the thing where you hold up to your mouth and it makes your voice go bigger?
A megaphone.
Megaphone saying, "Don't see this movie," which would make me want to see the movie more than anything else in the world.
Of course,
right?
There's a Father Ted episode like that where he goes is protesting outside the movie theater, and people are like, "Oh,
exactly." But yeah, and there were other people. I mean, and there's people who will say like, "Oh, it's too intense for kids" and stuff like that, which always just makes kids just want to see things more. It does okay at the box office. Like I said, it took a year to release. Some people thought it was too intense, but for the most part, it got decent reviews. Anjelica's performance got great reviews. She did Addams Family after this, and that's like one of her biggest. I think she's just the most perfect Morticia Addams ever. I just think she's an icon. I mean, whatever she does, I'm totally on board with it.
I just love her.
I do too. And we've been since we started this show, The Witches has been one of the most requested that people have. And especially since we've been covering Roald Dahl books, people have been saying, when are we doing The Witches? When are you doing The Witches? So I'm glad we did it because this is my first time seeing the movie. So I've seen.
Oh, you've never seen the movie before?
Never.
Oh.
I thought it was a kid's movie. So I was like,
yeah. I think I had to go with I must have taken some kids to see it, like a niece and nephew or something like that.
Yeah.
That I saw. I remember seeing it in the movie theater. Loved it. I mean, and I think, well, I think the book, I mean, the movie is definitely not as misogynistic as
no
at all. Yeah, it's a good story, but it's no Matilda, and I wouldn't read it to a child, this story. I don't think I would. I remember I might have mentioned this before. I took the kids, they were littler. I took them to see the new version of Pete's Dragon. It was a live action, and the movie, if you've ever seen the live action new Pete's Dragon, it has nothing to do with the one that we grew up with. It's a totally different story. And in the new one, the movie opens with the parents being killed in a car accident with the little boy in the back seat. And my children burst into tears and cried for the entire rest of the movie. They did not get over the opening of the movie. It's a lot. Like I don't know.
It's intense.
It's intense. It's not, and again, like comparing it to James and the Giant Peach, where the parents are killed right at the beginning, but it's in a totally different way. It's, first of all, it's fast. It's weird. You're not worried about your parents being eaten up by an escaped rhinoceros, typically. Yeah. But there is some stuff there. There's some stuff there that I can see would make a good movie. And I like that it fell into the hands of Nicolas Roeg and Jim Henson. I think
it's an interesting combo.
Mm-hmm.
really interesting.
It works really well.
Yeah, it really does. Anjelica Huston won for Boston Society of Film Critics Hugo Award. I'm sorry, Los Angeles Film Critics Award and the National Society of Film Critics Award. So she was honored for her work, and it's just super great. And I think for me, book versus movie, it's the movie by like a long shot.
Oh, absolutely. And and I think the ending is good. The kids don't want to know that, like, I'm going to end up a mouse with 4 years to live or whatever. Like,
I'm going to die with my grandmother in a few years.
Yeah,
that's a bummer.
No, and this is the other thing that I think is really cool about this movie and so genius of Roeg and Henson. Ending the movie the way that they did means that kids will want to see it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kids want to go see that happen again. I want to see the whole thing all over again. That kid stays a mouse. I'm not going back to see that again. Why would I do that? Like the book. I don't want to read that again. So movie. For sure.
Yes.
This was a super fun October. We had some really fun ones. When I thought we had run out of the spooky movies adaptations that we could do.
Along comes a great one.
We have yet to do Dracula.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we definitely have some more to go through. I mean, believe me. Yeah.
But we had some really good ones this month, and they were listener suggested, and so we really appreciate that. We were glad to finally get to The Witches. Now we have a great one for next week, which is November. I can't believe it's November. Here we are.
Yes, so we're going to be, is it Marhan or Marjane?
I'm not sure.
We'll figure it out. It's Persepolis. It's the story of a childhood. And it's a book that came out a few years. It's a graphic novel. And you'll find it either in the teens or the children's section. And it came out in 2003. It's a woman that grew up in Iran and then was there in 79 when everything went haywire in Iran and everything changed in Iran. We thought it would be interesting considering what's happening in Iran right now, especially with women and talking about women again. And so we just thought there's an excellent movie. It's an animated film and it's based on this story, and it's so interesting. If you aren't familiar with the history, this is a really good way to kind of prep you for it. It's just she's fascinating. The story is so interesting, and we think you'll really enjoy it. And I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah, it's not something that our generation was taught in school because it was too recent. Our textbooks didn't go that far in those days. So I don't know. I'll have to ask my kids if they've learned anything about that, because our country is elbows deep in that story. And so it'll be very interesting. I'm really looking forward to, I haven't read the book in a while, so and I've never seen the film. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, Persepolis will be coming out, so that'll be our next book. And thank you so much. And please send us your suggestions and all those places that we mentioned at the top of the show. My book is called Filmed in Brooklyn. Get it wherever you get your books. It's also on Kindle, by the way. I just found out it's on Kindle, so if that's how you prefer to get it.
Yes, it is.
It is. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at Fit Chick, for Twitter and Instagram. My site is brooklynfitchick.com, and I'm on TikTok at Margot Donahue. We will be back soon with Persepolis. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book versus Movie Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. You could follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon